these stories passed down. So like for me, I would hear my grandmother's stories and then my mother's stories would both come down to me.
Yeah.
And I am sure that for many, like depending on how old Big Mama is, you might be hearing Big Mama's story, Nana's story, your mama's story, and you're only 9 years old. I know you've probably been pulled over a lot, but how many times do you think you've been pulled over because you was Black?
Zero.
Zero?
Zero. Every time I got pulled over, it's because I did something. I was speeding.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never gotten pulled over just to get pulled over. I just never experienced that. I mean, I know it happens. I'm not gonna discredit anybody else, but
yeah,
it's never happened to me.
There are studies that show, more pullovers of Black men happen in the South, more unwarranted car searches happen in the South. Things like that don't typically tend to happen out here on the West Coast or in the Northeast. And so I wonder if, some of it is simply just regional and the historic relationship between Black and white in certain regions of our country. But going back to this video and the trauma aspect, one, I think when we tell children, especially young children, these stories and we repeat these stories, it has a way of creating a trauma response in them to a degree. And I'm not, I know about like the ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences and things like that. And I know that that comes with an entire set of criteria in order for it to be a traumatic event for a child. But I do think that even if at least it's secondary trauma that a child could experience through storytelling. And what's worse, Kevin, to me is when we now get these stories passed down. So like for me, I would hear my grandmother's stories and then my mother's stories would both come down to me.
Yep.
And I am sure that for many, like depending on how old Big Mama is, you might be hearing Big Mama's story, Nana's story, your mama's story, and you're only 9 years old.
Yeah. And it passes down. I mean, we see in that video, that girl is crying because, well, the first one was crying because she was thinking about her cousin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that one. And then the other little girl, she's crying because of what she's hearing her dad say happened to him.
Yeah.
These girls, they've got trauma. She has trauma because she's afraid of something to this degree. I mean, after the Philando Castile shooting,
mm-hmm.
I remember my sister called me crying, just crying, telling me to be careful, right? The trauma is real. The fear is real. It might not be warranted, but it is real. That's what people need to understand.
Yeah. And it's a fear of death. It's a fear that my, immediate parent or loved one, caregiver is going to be harmed. And these are all things that we know can produce trauma. It doesn't mean that it always will produce trauma or anything like that, but that it can. And especially in a secondary nature, like if it comes through more of the storytelling aspect. But I'm not like a trauma expert or anything like that. I've read things, but I am concerned that as a community, we tend to lean so heavy on storytelling and on narrative that we are now leading children and young people away from truth and away from relationship with people who may not bear their same skin color. And it's just not a healthy place to be in as a people.
No, it's not. Especially because other minority communities aren't having these conversations. They aren't instilling this type of fear in their kids of the police. It is only in our communities that it is happening. And it is a perpetual cycle. And like I say, it flows down. These things flow down. And I think it's important for people to realize how Black people view these events. The majority of the country views these things as that particular incident happened in that particular place.
Mm-hmm.
Black people tend to view things as a continuous line of history, right?
Yes.
So where Big Mama went through, where Mama went through, what's happening now is one continuous thing. That's why they
Mm-hmm.
can say it's never changed, y'all. It's never changed. This is
Yeah.
still just like this is Emmett Till still happening,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's how they think. That's how they feel and believe. That's how they emotionally ingest all of these incidents that happen. So it doesn't matter how often it happens or doesn't happen. The fact that when it happens and the news plays it over and over in a loop, the Black community, those memories get triggered. Even if they
Yeah.
didn't experience that stuff themselves, even if this incident didn't happen to them, they view it as if it happened to them,
Yeah.
right?
And
And they
again,
feel like they're in danger.
I agree. And it's not to say that racism isn't real or that people aren't targeted, but the degree to which we have this conversation as if every time you get pulled over, it's only because of your
Yeah,
skin color is what I think really builds this tension and this fear and what I would consider at least a secondary trauma in young people, in especially in our Black men. It builds an anger. I mean, I don't know if you see that, but one of the things that I see is, and it doesn't even have to be in regards to the police, but just Black men toward whites overall. There's oftentimes an anger in regards to race and racial injustice. And does that make sense?
absolutely. I see it all the time.